Hi, my name is Daniel Heltzel. I'm representing the Berlin City Pilot, and I'd like to introduce you to our solution, which is tailored to wastewater heat as a circular source of heating. I'd like to describe the problem that we discovered in the beginning of the project, the solution that we came up with to solve the problem. Then I'd like to say something about the outreach that we are carrying out here in Berlin in order to make sure that the solution gets in the right hands. And my last point might be the most important one. I'd like to invite you to co-create with us based on the solution that we have. It's an open source solution, so it's fully accessible, available to everybody who wants to use it and improve it over time. Let me start with a problem. The problem that we discovered in the beginning of the project from a circular economy point of view is that Berlin, as many other metropolises in Europe, in fact, European countries, is using too much linear heating sources. They have a very bad CO2 footprint, as you can see in the right picture, where you can see on the very right side the CO2 footprint of energy sources like coal, gas, and oil. It also doesn't help to depend on questionable suppliers. Right now, due to tragic political circumstances, we are seeing that the dependency to questionable suppliers of linear heating sources is a huge problem that we want to get rid of as European societies. That's why we were looking into different heating sources and into the most circular one, as we say. And we understand the waste heat as a circular heating source because it means reusing heat which has been produced before. For instance, picture a big building with many flats, people taking showers. The warm water will go to the sewer system that is below the streets. And if you have the proper hardware in place, you can reuse that warm water and channel it into other buildings, redirect it, reuse it. Of course, that's actually quite a big effort to make it work. It's the opposite of a plug and play system. You need to install costly hardware, it will take time, and most importantly, you need to consider various types of information um, starting with the energy demand of the buildings nearby and the energy supply or the heat supply of other buildings. And this is exactly where we wanted to start. We wanted to build a solution which allows you to combine all relevant data about the urban infrastructure for making decisions about where to implement wastewater heating systems. So you actually need to consider quite a few information to make sure that it's economically and ecologically viable. And that's what we wanted to support with a web application because we realized wastewater heating is not being implemented often enough, primarily because the information about all the relevant stakeholders and their interests are not synchronized. So that's why our solution is a pretty data-driven solution. It's a very digital solution if you compare it to other reflow projects. However, it turned out to be just the right approach to solve the problem that often property owners, property developers don't know where wastewater heating is possible if their property allows for it, and also make it easier for the city of Berlin to suggest this circular source of heating for new projects. So we started with simulating all kinds of data about the pressure pipe network, the sewer system. These are simulation data our local partner, the city of Berlin, in form of the Berlin Water Management Agency, developed. They actually have a vast amount of knowledge about it in the meantime. We also took into account operational data, which are critical areas. Where is construction work planned? Which are water protection areas? What is the frequency of the sewer cleaning? All these operational factors need to be considered if you want to come up with a suggestion where wastewater heating makes sense in the city of Berlin. We combined that with data about the urban infrastructure, like parameters of houses, which are the biggest properties that demand a lot of heat. which are existing wastewater heat implementations that we could connect with. And all these data would be pooled in one application, basically, and we would get a wastewater heat potential map. It shows where it would make particular sense to implement wastewater heating as the circular source of heating that we think is to be preferred over linear sources of heating. Our prototype shows where wastewater heat potentials and demands could be met within the city very specifically. So you can enter an address and you'll get information about where it makes sense to use it and how much of the energy demand can be covered. You can search for different types of properties, such as administrative buildings, here marked in lilac. And this is particularly interesting, for instance, for an urban planner who works for the city of Berlin or any other European city, of course, and wants to modernize administrative buildings in terms of heating. When it comes to the outreach, we were trying to gain the attention of experts and decision makers via expert media and conferences. So we also talked to citizens. However, we understood that the solution is actually something experts need to use to make sure that most of the people in a metropolitan area can profit from it. That's why we turn to expert media. For instance, here a print medium that tailors to um, um, craftsmen in the space installing heating sources. Cut, vorigen Slide noch einmal. When it comes to the outreach, we were trying to gain experts' attention via expert media and conferences. We thought that getting to experts and decision makers is particularly important in this particular pilot because the topic is quite complex and the solution has to be used by someone who is making decisions about the heating setup for a particular property or even a district. And that's why we chose more, let's say, expert-oriented outreach strategies, even though we also carried out numerous workshops and information events where we would talk to interested citizens. We understood that's actually a challenge that we are facing and we are still facing is that regional lobbying for circular heat candidates, meaning properties and property owners, means many informed phone calls. So it's actually a very time-consuming activity to go through various potential users who might be interested in working with the technology that we have and going from linear to circular heating. Finally, I'd like to invite you to work with us to develop the platform further. So with you, our platform could be extended to other sources of waste heat. We are talking about wastewater heat, but what about server buildings, server hubs that also emit a lot of warm air as waste heat? That can be moved from one property to the other using other technologies such as mobile energy storage. You could also team up with us to add functionalities. Think of sector coupling, so combining wastewater heating with other energy sources. This is where it actually becomes very complex, and we would love to look into this potential with you using the open source software that we have developed. So please feel invited if you are representing a smaller city, a public stakeholder or a private stakeholder or a nonprofit to team up with us and use what we have to make it a holistic energy planning cockpit for public users. I think this could be an amazing Cut, auch wieder scheiße. Nochmal neu. So finally, I'd like to invite you to co-create with us based on the solution that we have available. So with you, our platform could be extended to other sources of waste heat. Think of waste heat emitted from buildings that generate a lot of hot air. This can be stored and moved from one point to the other through energy storage systems. But you could also team up with us to add functionalities such as sector coupling optimization, something we are particularly interested in, because this is what most smaller cities demand, is a cockpit that can be used to do a holistic kind of energy planning for the whole area. We would consider wastewater heating as a circular source of heating, but we could also factor in different types of heat sources and energy. So please feel invited to reach out to us and work on the solution. Auch wieder kompletter Scheiß, neu. Finally, I'd like to invite you to work with us based on the solution that we have available. For instance, with you, our platform could be extended to other sources of waste heat. Think of hot air emitted from buildings that generate a lot of heat, for instance, using servers. Here, energy storage systems can help to move heat from one point to the other. Also, you could team up with us to add functionalities, such as sector coupling optimization. It basically means to figure out the optimum using different sources of energy, both circular as well as linear, as long as we still depend on them. But definitely it is something a lot of smaller cities would benefit from, like a holistic planning cockpit for the use of primarily circular heating sources. So if you're interested in teaming up with us, please reach out to us, and we are looking forward to connect with you. Thank you.